I thought a long time about if I will do this video or not, but here we are. To give you a proper context, I'm gonna talk about my thoughts and also my worries. What would actually bring people back to Planet Coaster 2? Now, before we jump in, there is a very obvious issue with the actual player base of Planet Coaster 2 at the moment. The game is not even half a year old, and we are seeing the overall player count dropping to a very concerning low point, even below Planet Coaster 1, which is over 8 years old, and far below Planet Zoo, that is over 5.5 years old. And there is an ongoing pattern of people not coming back to games that had a very rough launch. Cities Skylines 2 is suffering from the very same issue, despite the fact they have improved already quite a lot and have been very open and transparent in their communication after hitting a wall, which, you know, is kind of the same situation we are in with Planet Coaster 2. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about the current roadmap very quickly, because we talked about this already, and my concerns about what is in this roadmap versus what would need to be done in order to bring people back to the game. I've done a quick little survey on my German channel just to see what the German people are thinking, and I will do the same with you guys at the end of this video, and I'm gonna drop another survey after all. However, let's start with an outline of the roadmap real quick. As said, the roadmap showed us a very significant move forward when it comes to fixing the main issues. I'm saying fixing the main issues despite the fact most of the things are labeled as new free content. It's, it depends a little bit on how you phrase it. I personally think Frontier is on a good way. They have understood the situation how it is, and I also have my personal opinions about what should have been in the game and what not. So it's not like some people say that everything would have to be in a sequel, but like one of the most important things is that certain fixes that are receiving now and all the overhaul of the slides and pools, for example, should have been in the base game, granted. And for this video, for the sake of this video, because it's my very personal opinion, let's just kind of, for the moment, forget about all the potential pressure of shareholders and the management that, asked everyone to release a game earlier than it needs to be, because we are facing the situation and there is no way around this. So it's what we have to deal with. So the roadmap, as it is there, it's great, and it gives us a very proper understanding of what's going to happen, and we do understand that the game is becoming, well, actually better. A lot of things have been fixed, a lot of things will be fixed, and a couple of nice additions from the first game will make its way in. However, there is still a long list of things that, for example, Planet Zoo brought to the table that should be in Planet Coaster 2 as well. There's a whole bunch of potential themes and scenery items that could be ported over from either Planet Zoo or Planet Coaster 1. A lot of things could happen. However, I don't think that anything around this roadmap would actually bring people back to the game. Now, to be very clear, I don't think a single person who isn't at least playing this game once in a week now will come back. Nobody who's playing less than that will come back because of all these fixes. These people potentially are lost, and unfortunately we don't have player counts on console, so the only thing we can look at is Steam count. And obviously, I do estimate that most of the people who have gotten Planet Coaster 1 on Steam would get it on Steam again, so it's kind of a fair comparison, and as we didn't have the console player base at launch of Planet Coaster 1 or Zoo, we can't really compare them either. So, as it is said, and I would love to see how many people are still playing on console, I think for the sake of comparing things, it doesn't really matter that much, and it doesn't really have that much of an influence. So we can say there needs to be something absolutely huge to bring people back. This is part 2 of the video. We are talking about the huge potential, well, features, however you want to call this, that would bring people back to the game. To give you a comparison, in Planet Zoo, it is a way simpler story. I said that earlier, and Planet Zoo could obviously bring people back by giving a full aquatic DLC, a proper double price DLC that is absolutely packed with a lot of, aquatic animals and pieces and stuff, or the second option obviously being birds and aviaries. However, I have a hard time seeing this for Planet Coaster 2, because the headline feature that would be the safe bet for Planet Coaster 1, for example, was already the water parks. It was already the water parks, and it's definitely not easy to think about another big, kind of feature that is equally important to theme parks in general than that. So let's get into my ideas that I think could have a potential, if realized correctly, to really make this big impact. So the first one is being the resort update. Now you might think, hey, what are you talking about? There's actually a resort theme in the game already. Well, and that's part of the issue. It's part of the issue because Frontier brought that in. Frontier very early on said there are not going to be any hotels in the game, and everyone was like, oh, hey, maybe they hold it back for later. Now, for later would have been in the world that could have been possible 4 months ago if a proper launch would have happened. Would have been a kind of resort DLC with like hotels and a couple of things. Would that be enough? No. To make it a mega feature, I think you would need a complete functional overhaul of the system, how the game and the delivery and the whole resort idea comes to life. So as we already have the chance to have different areas on our maps, and we can in career mode purchase new land and have like make these scenarios like in different territories, this would be a thing. Hotels and resorts will have different territories. So you can have a main theme park, you can have like a resort area, and you can have a second theme park. Now the idea, if you know Aston Wolf's Wilderness Springs, kind of has that idea that there's like a road in the center separating the two areas, and then on the one hand side of the road you've got like the resort area with the water park in it, and then on the other side of the road there's the actual theme park. So if that gets a proper mechanic, that you have a proper hotel, and equally would also have an impact on the management, so that people who spend time in a hotel will obviously spend more money, and also will spend more time in your park, because having now the daytime rhythm of the game, it would allow you to do that kind of feature, that people would stay 2, 3, even 4 days, like proper days in your park, with equally paying the fee for the hotel and getting back to the hotel in the evening and rejoining the park in the morning. Time-wise with the game, it would finally work. You can actually make them, instead of just making them disappear from the spawner, they would go into the hotel and then eventually come out. It would also give you the option to bring in proper nightlife, which the park usually closes, and you can still have the whole night as a feature, and people would roam around if you're in Sandbox, but realistically the park would be closed and people would be out. And like with the option to skip through the time in Sandbox and so on, it just obviously wouldn't work. But if you enable that feature, you just can't skip to nighttime, or you would, and then people would be leaving the park, and so you would have proper nightlife. If you remember Koali, we kind of did this in Koali Beach. We built like our own proper party area with the idea in mind that after the closing hours of the park, this dedicated party area becomes a living thing, so to say, where people can go. And it would open up a complete new world of party stages and music stages and stuff like that you could bring in. And there's a good chance Frontier is very good in animating that. So put down a music stage, put down like a proper area where to grab some drinks and so on, have some vendors or waitresses or whatever running around, and waiters. There is a lot of waiters, and to have them all integrated here and included. There is a whole chance to have that as a big update, and also adding a complete new area to the game that we've not had in this game before. Alright, my second big feature would be a logistics DLC. And maybe I should have explained that earlier on, but for me personally, a DLC always goes along a big proper free update. We had the same story for the last 8.5 years with both Planet games, and for the resort theme, obviously that would be the same. We would get the functional thing and everything cosmetic and everything piecewise and so on, you would get then with the DLC. The same goes for the logistics update. The logistics update would be a mega change in how everything works and would be the perfect follow-up to the resort theme. So first of all, you would get some more delivery options. You would have some buildable spawn areas that equal a bus station, a monorail station, a train station that actually not even act as a different transportation hub, but would also add to the capacity of your potential park and your potential resort in that certain sense. And also each different connection would grant you access to different target groups, for example. So that would be properly done. But also it would add another layer of realism by having, for example, waste and kind of maintenance management in the way of having a proper delivery stand or a delivery area. One game that does it pretty well is Prehistoric Kingdom, and potentially I'll use some footage of that or images of that in the background now, where you do have a proper logistics hub where the trucks can come in, and you have that animation where the trucks come in and deliver some goods, and then you also have some areas where you can produce some food for, well, in Prehistoric Kingdom for the animals, but you could have like a maintenance shed, for example, for coasters. And again, we don't necessarily need transfer tracks, and it would have been a nice idea, but having kind of a maintenance shed or anything like that would also add to the realism, but also equal it to the depth of the game's simulation in total. But that's not all. Logistics would also be that you have a logistics plan inside of your park. That means you really would have something going, like maybe even cleaning, like these kind of cleaning vehicles you have going through the park, but that would be a little bit too far. I personally think it's more interesting to have it all, built around the idea of logistics, having also deliveries for your hotel and resort areas, and also having deliveries for your coasters if you build them, so that this all gets a bit more realism and also gets a bit more of a nice touch. And even more so, it would mean that you have a whole bunch of other connections, maybe wastewater connection and all these type of things. I know it might not be for everyone, but the thing is, I wanted to find something that is a bigger impact to the game and makes it stand out more from the other Planet games and from specifically Planet Coaster 1, because I really think that this is a mega change in what the game's appearance will make, but also the game's replayability will make, because you could make different regions have different challenges for the logistics and so on. So it gives you proper replayability, which I think is a very important thing for the game. So the logistics update would be my second one, but I think one of my favorite ones would be the next. And this is Midway Games and Co, I would call it. Why and Co? Well, because there is a whole bunch of things I want to get into, and I don't really have a name framing this all. Maybe it's the festival update, but that doesn't fit anyways. My idea is that the game is already pretty strong at flat rides and coasters and rides in general. But what the game isn't strong at, because it definitely doesn't have it at all, is all these kind of things beside the big park. These type of Midway games and little kind of, we had something like very tiny things in Planet Coaster 1 with that little, what was that, the one-handed bandit and so on, kind of small little things, but like it would be very fun to have proper like in-game things like Midway games, mini golf, like these type of things, kind of these type of raffle corners where you can do some giveaways and so on, and all these kind of tiny things, and maybe even playgrounds for kids, for example, tiny playgrounds where kids can spend a bit of time. I think that would have another big impact to, first of all, kind of style your parks, make them more realistic in the looks of things, but also just kind of give you that whole feeling. And also with that, a level of other things would be mega, and this is like having, for example, proper strollers and wheelchairs and lockers as actual items in the park, which all goes together. Maybe the name for that would be the park accessories or so, because that's what it is, like really giving a bit more spirit to the game and to the guests and to the animations of them, making it all feel more alive and feel more realistic in what the park is made of in terms of the activity that goes on in it. I really think that would make the whole aspect of the park absolutely amazingly new and fresh. When you consider other games, this would be something very unseen. I mean, some games have that, some other have this, but I would really love to see the idea of having these extras for the guests specifically, really taking a step back from all these big mega show rides and really go into the smaller things that you would do in between. And honestly, some of these Midway games would also work very well in the in the resort update already, because these things typically you have, like if you look at, for example, Disneyland, you always have like Disney Valley, Disney Town, or however you call that. You also have that Europa Park, and even Fantasyland has something like this in the evening. Not as big, obviously, but like you typically have these things as well to give guests a little bit of a perspective for that. But like with those things, you would really give the game such a big shareable thing, and in shareable I mean media and other people talking about, like, hey, have you heard you can now do this and this on Planet Coaster 2? I think this is what we need. This is the kind of little spark that could bring a lot of people back and give them a whole bunch of new opportunities, like almost as we saw that with the aquatic update to Planet Zoo, even though it was just a year in. But I personally think that the aquatic DLC or the aquatic update, I should call it, because the diving mechanic is not a paid asset. It's definitely a free update we got after a year. And I personally think that this was one of the key parts to make this game work for such a long time, and for make Planet Zoo one of the best-selling games ever, maybe even the best-selling game ever, if you consider the single platform it was on for the most part of the time. And I really think this would be something that Planet Coaster 2 needs as well. A update after a year that just follows the ones I have outlined, that would give the game some proper traction again, and making sure that like everything just works. There is one more thing I would love to talk about, even though I don't think it is necessarily as much of a big star, because this is tackling a bit more of the nerd kind of area. I know that a lot of theme park enthusiasts are always focused on realism. We see that realism always works good on YouTube, always works good in the series and so on. But I think it wouldn't be headline enough, you know what I mean? But I would love to get like as a fourth one, and then, you know, I would call it a day with these 4 big ones, even though it's 3+1. Let's call it 3+1, because I feel like the fourth one I'm going to talk about in a second is not as strong. Now, I guess realism for a certain part is only made by aesthetics and cosmetics that we build, but I would love to see also the staff members being a lot more accurate. And by that, most importantly, I mean the ride attendants, which has no job at all at the moment. But like, imagine you would have someone who's taking care of, you know, the stuff from the guests. By the way, no backpacks or anything as of now. So in the previous mentioned accessories update, there would be backpacks as an item as well. So you would need to get rid of the backpack, which the ride attendants need. They can check the restraints before going on a coaster, and, you know, having a lesser trained ride attendant with a lesser skill in checking the restraints could lead to more failure in the area of like restraints, for example, as there is a problem in the game with restraints not opening or so, is an item. So at the end of the day, realism could focus on so many things, having entertainers do more stuff, like entertaining areas, you know. We could have proper shows with actual staff members performing, where you have like almost like a sequencer letting them do some tasks, and in contrast to the first game where you had all the animatronics, which also worked kind of nice, but this time around would be like almost like a AI training in that kind of sense, or like at least a scripting, which I would find at least very interesting to see. And obviously it comes with a whole bunch of potential things, like really having security as a part of the game again, having backstage deliveries a part of the game again. So these things would tie in also very nice with what I said earlier. So maybe you see that I had a certain idea in mind with 3+1 themes I had already laid out. I did put them in this very order because I think like they would really build upon each other very nicely, with like the resort one being the most, I think, marketable in a way, and then the follow-ups would really tie in nicely, because that's what they do that would really make the whole game stand out more. Obviously, I know that 95% of what I said will never happen, but like for me personally, this is the only chance that this game will become a successor and a really successful game. Otherwise, I feel like it's gonna get a solid game where the core community will have a lot of fun with in the future, but it's not gonna be as big as it should have been, and that would be very disappointing. So Frontier, if you're listening, if you've seen all these ideas, if you want to know more about that, please contact me. We can do an interview, okay? No, I'm just kidding, but like, from my very own perspective, this is what needs to happen. At least a couple of these things to bring people back, to make them realize, oh my god, there are big things happening, to go back to the game and give it a chance. And this brings me to the full circle moment. All of these updates, all of these DLCs would be absolutely nonsense if the base game isn't working. So, the roadmap and fixing the game is a must before. It's a given. The game must be properly fixed and working very fine before you pull back people, because if you lose them then again because the game doesn't function, they will never ever get back. Even if you throw $100 at them, they will not come back. So I guess the roadmap is a great thing to begin with, but much more has to follow. And with that, have a good time and bye.